3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Thunderstock Show, collection of brainstorms to enhance your life, liberty, and pursuit of property. I am your host, Ross Stockdale, with another episode, short and sweet interview with Blake Zimmerman, the owner of Zimmaging Photography. I did say that right, correct?
That is correct.
So I've known Blake since 7th grade. We were in tech ed class, the very first class of the year in junior high.
Oh,
and
how do you remember that?
I have a weird selective memory.
That one's gone.
Bad short term, good long term.
Yeah.
And at another time, I want to go really deep into like telling stories and having fun. But Blake, how did you get into photography?
I've been into it off and on for a very long time. You know, I was given my first camera when I was like 8, 9 years old, and been messing with it since then. And then senior year of high school, I kind of wasn't quite going to make it through senior year of high school. Went to trade school instead for photography. Kind of ended up abandoning it after that, just because the only way to make money at that time was in weddings and stuff like that. Social media hadn't taken off.
Yeah, it wasn't really
digital marketing really wasn't there.
Yeah,
I mean, it was there, but it wasn't as
I think we had
much
Zanga and MySpace was our
Thank God those are not on the internet anymore. But it was like, okay, you got to do weddings, and I did one as a photographer's assistant, and I did not enjoy it. It was way too high stress, way too high pressure, and just ended up kind of losing interest in it because it was like, well, if that's the only way I'm going to make money, I don't really want to do this, or I don't really want it. It's not going to be lucrative. Ended up in kitchens, ended up becoming a chef over the course of years and years and years. So photography's always been like a hobby, but never like actually.
Because you did photography as a hobby for a while too, like not for
a very long time. Yeah, and I still do. I still do 99% of what I'm doing is for fun and for. I enjoy doing it. But I would say over the last like handful of years, I got a really awesome chef position in Denver, Colorado. I just moved back from there. I was working for them. They said that their social media guys weren't doing the best. I said I can do better pictures than what I'm seeing on there. Ended up taking over that, kind of doing some freelance work for them, some freelance work for other small businesses, and kind of realized like, oh, I can make some money off of doing this. I can kind of make this into a business. And I'm not doing it to get rich. You know, anybody who thinks they're doing that to get rich is, like, I love it. So just moving back here, I was like, okay, you know, I'm mid-30s. I don't want to be in a kitchen forever. I don't want to be a chef forever. It's not a healthy thing to do. I was like, so I want to.
You had a good run.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I want to do that part time. I can always help. I always am going to know how to do it. I'm always going to have a part of me that like loves that. But I want to move forward in the photography thing a lot more.
So in terms of, you know, it being a hobby, like what are some of your like favorite projects you've done of photography? Like what are some cool, some really ones that you know may not have sold for the most, whatever. Who cares about the money? But like, what are some of the ones you're most proud of?
I mean, it's all comes back to taking pictures of my dog.
That's cool.
It all comes back to that. It all comes back to like mostly like portraits of family and stuff. I think that a lot of that is growing up and meeting up with my grandparents, finding all the old binders and folders and boxes of old photographs of family photos and event photos and stuff, and being able to look back on that. I feel like we lost track of that with phones being cameras and having cameras all the time.
Right.
That nobody really goes back and looks through like old photos.
Like Polaroids almost.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like, when was the last time you paged through like actual 4x6 photographs?
Yeah, like Peter Parker, Spider-Man.
Exactly.
The Daily Bugle, not with his iPhone. You know, he did it with Polaroids.
But I think there's something very special in like physical media, and it's losing its way now, or not losing its way, but it's losing its like prevalence in everybody's lives. And I think that like going through with older people in your family and with like showing younger people in your family, like you're able to say like, here's hundreds of pictures that like grandma took, here's hundreds of pictures that your mom took, here's hundreds of pictures that grandpa took, and you can tell who took the pictures because they're not in the pictures, and you're able to flip through and kind of have this like snapshot. Whereas, like, how many phones do you have that had hundreds of pictures on them that are just in the ether now? They're just gone. So, like, my kind of passion for it is, like, I like the physical media side of it. I like the, like, making a thing out of taking a photograph more so than, like, taking a photo just because I have my phone in my pocket. So a lot of what I take my pride in is, like, not anything that's going to pay off right now. It's more like years and years in the future. It's like there's photos of my
making
niece.
memories.
Photos of is like the memories and that, and I want to be able to do that for other people. I want to be able to do that for other businesses and stuff too, so business can see like how much they grew, how much their product grew, stuff like that. When I start leaning into like product photography, but.
So you did product photography for restaurants, which is probably pretty cool because like you're used to making the food, but then you're making art of the culinary art.
Yeah, which there's a lot of translation there, but there's also a lot of like hang up too, because like a lot of chefs will be like, it's hard to get in where you're like, okay, I need all this stuff in an hour span, and they want to just knock it all out and give it to you. It's like, yeah, I don't need it to be hot and fresh, but I need it to look good, and food only looks good for 10-15 minutes after you put it up.
Oh, really?
Starts losing its luster, not entirely, but like
it looks best like 15 minutes after
it translates, but it also helps having been a chef of knowing like I understand your timing. I understand nobody wants to be the guy making the chef do extra work before they start a shift in a restaurant. But at the same time I have that empathy, and I have like knowing what I can do to kind of fluff it up on my end, or like make it look a little better with me, and knowing what looks good on a plate versus what looks good to you in a restaurant versus what looks good in high definition on a phone when you're scrolling is kind of two different animals.
So you mentioned before that you really like, from growing up with your grandparents and your family photos, feeling the actual physical media. How is photography different when you're doing it for online versus for physical media? Because, one of the things I learned when I had my first marketing job, I had to learn because we were doing so much product photography, which I had no idea how to do.
Yeah.
Was the high res versus low res. High res typically more for like your magazines and like your physical media, and the low res more for web. So as far as that goes, that's about the extent of my knowledge on physical media versus digital. But like from your creative lens, like how different is stuff that goes on the internet versus physical? Like how do you approach it?
I mean, it's a different sale, I guess you would say, like, because it's like nobody's gonna be scrolling on Instagram and see a picture of pasta bolognese and be like, I want that framed in my living room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like an Italian restaurant might,
but like their dog or their niece or their grandma.
Yeah, so it's really like you're doing. It's almost like two completely different sports. Like it's like I do a little bit of fine art photography. Nothing that I'm not selling $1,000 pictures to hang on your wall. But like I have,
but that stuff's cool.
But that stuff is cool, and I do enjoy doing that. And I do enjoy like staging stuff for fine art, or like like nature photography is a little more that I lean as far as like that direction goes. Where that would be something more, like I wouldn't be taking nature photography for a business online. That would be something that either just personally for me, or to frame, or to have
someone could
displayed.
Buy a print,
yeah, to buy a print. Whereas like marketing photography is like, I want to keep their eye on this because they're not going to go back and look at it. I want them to have an impression right then and there. Whereas like with the fine art and the nature photography, it's like, I want something that if somebody has it on their wall, they're not tired of it in a week.
So it's like an attention game too. It's like
the
commercial stuff is like, all right, I only have your attention for 30 seconds. I'm going to grab it. But the fine art's like, hey, I want to keep this in your
and you
make
want
it cool for generations.
And you want it also, and it's also like different marketing too, where like with the food photography online, it's like you want people can be like, who took that picture for you? I want that from a marketing versus who took that picture that's hanging in your living room. I really like that. And I like that art style. So it's a little two kind of different animals as far as it goes. And physical media is a very different animal because I'm not showing up to restaurants with an envelope full of 8x10s for them because they're not going to have anything to do with them. They want the digital files, which is different pricing, different sales, different marketing packages.
So from a technical aspect, I know that you're really into like the engineering stuff or like the how things work, like understanding the tool. Not just like, oh, this got good reviews on Amazon, this is why I'm buying it.
Yeah.
So like, what are some of the differences between the camera that you use and like an iPhone?
I think the level of control. Like, and don't get me wrong, I love my iPhone. I love taking pictures with my iPhone. I think that I would
for
miss...
the everyday person, it's fine.
I would miss so many pictures if it wasn't for my iPhone. But there are so many pictures that like I will never go back and look at because I forgot I took them on my iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
Versus like, and you walk the dog, and every time that I go to walk the dog and I decide not to bring my camera, there's inevitably something that I'm glad I have my iPhone for.
Right.
iPhone for convenience, speed, the fact that I can hand my iPhone to a stranger and say, hey, can you take a picture of me and this person or me here? If I, a lot of the time in Denver, I was like out and about solo. You know, if I want a picture of myself or I want a picture like with somebody else, you know, I don't want to hand my expensive camera to somebody who doesn't know what half the buttons do and be like, hey, can you take a picture of somebody, of me, or of the group I'm with, but also make sure you don't press this button, but press this button, but also like don't touch that
use
dial,
this lens.
Exactly. Where like an iPhone,
Yeah.
it's just like you're gonna get a good picture out of iPhone. Like I love it. I absolutely love that I have a high def camera in my pocket all the time. But there's something, and I think it connects back to the physical media. It's more like tactile. It's more like you feel like you're doing more with an actual camera and with changing settings and everything.
And you can take a picture that like an iPhone might be able to get a 7 out of 10, but like your actual camera can do like 10.
You get like that extra. It's got like that feeling to it, and you're like, I want it to look like an iPhone. Like with the level, like the AI and cameras and stuff like that. It's like they know kind of what you want, but like if you're like, no, I want this in focus. I want this out of focus. I want it exposed for like this. You can do all that with an iPhone, but like. I like buttons, man. I miss buttons. I miss like you get into a car and everything's.
It's like driving a car, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you can have a Tesla that you can just say, all right, I want to go here, and it'll just self-drive you, kind of like the iPhone. Or you can have like a '67 Mustang, and like it's a manual.
You reach down, you can grab that volume knob without looking at it, like and it's just.
Yeah.
It feels good, like tactile, like that old-fashioned kind of feeling. It's like a nostalgic thing, I think, almost like.
Yeah.
Having the camera, people take better pictures when you point an actual camera at them than they do with an iPhone, because everybody is so used to having iPhones in their faces all the time. And even like some of the best pictures I've gotten have been with those little Kodak instant cameras, because people love seeing those, because there's nothing but nostalgia with those.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like podcasting for me. Like I could use the internal microphone of my camera on my iPhone, and it could be fine. Or I used to even use the internal microphone of my old camera, because I didn't know that my microphones weren't working. That's how it was for me in podcasting. But now,
it feels better having the setup.
Yeah, I can hear you through my headset. I know that I'm speaking clearly because I can hear it.
You're getting that instant feedback.
Yeah, so it's like for me, podcasting doesn't make a bunch of money. It's like, I love it. It's fun.
Yeah.
So I'm going to ask you one more question, because I know we're going to make a short episode. If you could go back to 18-year-old Blake, that was this is like my favorite question. Like, what is like 3 things you would tell 18-year-old Blake that was still in Lidditz, figuring it all out, doing photography school, because you're in business. Like you said you're never trying to be like a zillionaire, like trying to be super ultra. We're not trying to be Snapchat here, but like where you're at now is, you have clients, you have people asking you for work. Like you have a startup photography business. I know I use Blake for several projects and been happy working with him. I mean, probably helps because I've known him for a long time, but been really happy. And I'm like, dude, what would you tell yourself, 18-year-old Blake, about photography, about business? Not saying you know all the answers, but like more than you did at 18.
I think I would just try to convey to myself that like you don't have to do that there is more to do than just weddings. And there is more to do than just like that. I wasn't as pigeonholed as I thought I was, and that the world was more open than I thought it was in a lot of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because that came with like shortly after I became an adult, I moved to Colorado, and I moved across the country and saw like
you lived on your own for
so many
years.
different things. Lived on my own for so many years. Lived completely alone, like no family really. Moved without really any friends out there either, and kind of made it work. I wish I could have told myself that sooner, that I would have made that move almost a little sooner. And I wish I would have just told myself to stick with it. Like, don't put the camera in storage. Like, yeah, you have an iPhone in your pocket all the time, but like, don't lose that passion, because it's like, don't be in it for the money, but also at the same time, like, understand that like that option is there, and it's not like something I should have given up on. Would have told myself to spend less time in the kitchen. Would have told myself to spend a little less time with the distractions and stuff like that. But also like, looking back, it's like, I was in a ski town. There was so much photography opportunity there. There was so much. There's always something you can take a picture of. There's always cool material. You just have to understand how to look at it.
Dude, that's wild. That's such an interesting answer to that question, because like most people are like, I would have invested in crypto, but that's so relevant to like your actual story.
Yeah, I mean, I also I would have slapped the cigarettes out of my mouth, or like tell myself to drink 5 less beers a day, There's only so much you can tell yourself that's redundant at this point.
But the real thing is like, dude, when you have a passion, like you said, like 99% of the reason you pick up a camera now is because you love the game. It's
just fun. Yeah. It's just fun. It's fun. People enjoy it.
And if you get to make money doing what's fun, like that's a secondary byproduct.
Yeah. And it's also, walking down the street with a camera looking like you know what you're doing might pick you up a client. You know, it
Sure.
might pick you up somebody walking by that's
Have a
like, hey,
conversation,
this guy
you
kind
know,
of looks like
have-
he knows what he's doing.
Never would have met that person if you didn't have a camera or something.
Yeah.
Dude, so, okay, we're going to wrap this plane. All right, land the plane. Wrap this up. Blake Zimmerman, owner of Zimmaging Photography. People can find you on Instagram.
Instagram,
right?
just
The best
at
place.
Zimmaging, Zimmaging.
And your email is just Zimmaging
Zimmaging
at
at gmail.com. Reach out.
Get in touch if you want some dope photography. All right, so I'm going to conclude this episode with saying I don't have any paid sponsorships. I don't run ads on the show. The only way the show grows is if you enjoy it and you share it with a friend. So my ask, it would mean the world to me. If you liked this short expose of Zimmaging, if you want to be on the show, either reach out or share with a friend. For now, Thunderstock out. Peace.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thank
Awesome
you.
time.